So, good to see everybody. Today is Saturday morning in Thailand. It looks like again it's rained during the night, and it's quite cool out here on the porch. And today, let us talk about um, the word metta. Now, to start off with, because we're working so much on the website, we have to make sure that we're spelling it M-E-T-T-A rather than M-E-T-A, because M-E-T-A, metta, actually has a scientific use. It means a big and above, to where the metta that we talk about within Buddhism could be easily defined as friendliness. That in fact, there was some bumper stickers years ago that quoted the Dalai Lama when he says is that my religion is friendliness, or maybe it was my religion is kindness, but they're the same thing. Okay, the word friendly comes from the word family, and kindness, like our kind, comes from the same source. So, in a way, friendliness and kindness are exactly the same thing. So, um, first off, there in the time of the Buddha, there were groups who practiced metta, and that there is a sutta someplace. In fact, I think that it's the Metta Sutta, where um some of the bhikkhus of the Buddha had gone on Bendabat and ran across a bunch of ascetics that were practicing metta. And that in that conversation, there was some agreement in the sense that the ones who were practicing metta actually said that they started with being free from the hindrances, being free from unwholesome thoughts. And so, in a way, that really fits in with the teaching of the Buddha. Uh, However, uh, maybe the problem is the distinction in the actual way that it's practiced. Um, for instance, within the Buddhist context, I heard many times, I've actually used it when I was, let us say, the guide on meditation practice. Uh, I think on retreats at Wat Khao Tum, where the way that it's taught is having kind of wholesome statements of may all beings be happy. But the problem with the idea of may all beings be happy is that you're starting with a concept. And that concept is that all beings, where in fact you don't really have any influence over all beings. The best we can do is to have some, let us say, influence over that which is in your immediate environment. Also, the issue of may all beings be happy has to do with the assumption that all beings are not happy. This also fits in with the Mahayana concept of the Bodhisattva. And let me describe it this way, is that there are two kinds of bodhisattvas. The Buddha was a bodhisattva. It said so in the suttas. And what that meant is that he was out seeking. He had a question. And that maybe a way of looking at it is that he had a question, but the question wasn't really formed, because he, in his search, he actually ran across the jhanas, was practicing the jhanas, and got very skilled at the higher jhanas. That in fact he was so skilled in the higher jhanas that the group that he was practicing with wanted him to become the teacher. And he didn't want to be the teacher because he knew that the fourth jhana, the highest jhana that there was still not the answer to his question. And so there he went into austerities, and the group that he was with was with Nata Nataputta, is known in this day as Mahavira, and that this actually the group was the starting of the Jains. Now, they were really heavily into austerities. You can still see that austerities are very, very common practiced in India today, but they're practiced in all religions. Putting yourself under stress, hoping that you're developing some skills. And that the Buddha was so good at this when he was a bodhisattva that he nearly killed himself. And at one time he was out and fell into a stream, a creek, and he was so weak that he couldn't get out of it. He managed to find a branch and pull himself out, and after he got out and rested, he mused that. In fact, he began to figure it out then. I cannot get the answer to my question. I cannot attain anything significant if I am so sick, if I am so weak. I can't even crawl out of a creek. So that's when he began to put together, he started to eat. The story is that he got a bowl of rice milk from a cow maid, and that he was so thin at the time that just a little bit of nourishing food started to put a little belly on him. You've probably all seen those images of the starving Buddha, and that you can see also that if he starts to eat within just a few meals, he's going to start putting some weight on, get a little belly, and that his friends, when they saw that, they said, "Oh, he's given up the practice," and they left. They went up to the Deer Park, which is about 30 miles, 30 kilometers from where they were, and that he picked out a secluded place and sat, they say, for about 6 weeks there. Now, some people think that he was sitting and not moving for 6 weeks. But no, he was walking around. He was checking things out. And that while he was practicing there, he came across the understanding of Paticca Samuppada, which means the way that the mind works. Now, the group that was practicing Metta never got to the point of really understanding how the mind works. They were just coming out of their hindrances so that they could practice things like, may all beings be happy. Now, to be honest with you, I've actually seen people, actually the people that I've seen do it were elderly women who were practicing Metta and getting themselves into a state of bliss. But most people, they don't. And even after they get out of the bliss, they're still back to their ordinary state. That what we're practicing basically with Anapanasati, which is according to the teaching of the Buddha, is to come out of the hindrances and stay out of the hindrances. And when you go back into the hindrances, you recognize that and come back out of the hindrances again. Over and over and over again. So, when people practice Metta, it's not a continuous practice. They come out of that state. Now, the Metta practice then doesn't really understand how the mind works. And a better way, in fact, my friend Dhammarato, who's been a monk of 30 years, he's over on Koh Samui, He teaches at the Deepable One uh, Center. He talks about when he's talking about metta, he says that metta has to start with your own mind. You have to become friends with yourself. You have to learn to be kind to yourself because most of us are hard on ourselves. When we screw up, we don't like it. We go back really into hindrances. We go back into unwholesome thoughts when we're not kind to ourselves. We're hard on ourselves. We've got standards. We've got rules. And when we break our own rules, we feel bad. And so the way to practice metta is exactly the same way is that we would practice when we don't correctly, when we don't call it metta. That what we call it is, in a way, gladdening the mind, brightening the mind, coming out of our unwholesome thoughts. And so this has to be practiced over and over and over and over again because we're prone to having unwholesome thoughts. It's actually built right into our DNA. It's built into our instincts. Now, the four primary instincts are the self-preservation instinct, and the self-preservation instinct keeps people alive. An example of that is that mommy is watching little Johnny running out to the road to catch the ball, and she'll yell at him, "Don't run into the road. It's dangerous." Also, when we come up to a ledge or to a dangerous place, even those who are sportsmen, a lot of sportsmen kill themselves because they push it too far, but almost all of us will stop because of that instinct of self-preservation. However, ignorantly, that self-preservation gives rise to the concept of me. There's another, in fact, there's four primary instincts. And the primariest one of all is that self-preservation instinct. Now, from that is the procreation instinct, which would be better said as the creation instinct, that we like to do things. We like to piddle with things. We like to make websites. We like to write music. We like to play music. We like to engage with the world. And that engagement has to do, in fact, probably the first thing that ever happened in that regard for humans was tools. Now, that actually, some animals do tools, but not to the level that we do. So you can imagine that an otter can go down, dive down, give a clam in one hand and a stone in the other, floats back to the surface, puts the clam on his belly, and uses that stone to open that clam. Once the clam is opened, the stone is let go of, and it drops back to the bottom. And now he's got his clam. You can also see monkeys that will use a reed to put down a hole to get a worm, and when the worm starts to attach to the reed, the monkey will drag the excuse me, drag the reed out and get the worm. But when he does, he throws the reed away. But you can imagine some place that humans have been, let us say, get the carcass after the lions have left. The lions have eaten all that they can, but the human will take a stone and crack the bones open to get the marrow. Sometime along the way, some ancient, perhaps a pre-human, um, grabbed a stone, and it was very effective at breaking up these bones so that they could get the marrow out. And what did he do? He carried the stone away with him. He did not drop it. Well, after he started carrying the stone for a while, it got tired. So what did he do? He found a way of making a pouch. He put that pouch around his waist, and the next thing you know, we've got loincloths. Also, he was able to put a stick on that stone, and now we've got our first axe. Humans have been continually doing that, improving things through that creative instinct. And now everybody carries around a cell phone, and that's our axe, our old primitive axe. We haven't changed much in that regard. We're still using tools. So the next instinct is called the nesting instinct or the herding instinct. You know, if the wildebeest are attacked by a lion, they'll get into a tight bunch. That's the herd. And the stragglers, the ones who are on the outside of the herd, will be the one who gets eaten. So that means then that over many, many centuries of evolution, humans want to herd together. The ones who are on the outside are the ones who get eaten. So you feel more comfortable if you're in the middle. You want to be one of the insiders of the group. The next instinct is the instinct called territorial instinct, in the sense that this is our tribe, this is our territory, this is our herd, and those things that are outside the herd are foreign to us. This gives rise to the doubt about the others. We become tribalistic. We want to be around people who are like us, and we don't want to be around people who are not like us. So these are instincts. And you can see that these instincts actually in modern society with modern humans work for us, and sometimes, in fact, quite often, they work against us. For instance, the self-preservation instinct is rarely needed because we have very few dangers, but we can find dangers in all kinds of places and have that self-preservation instinct come up when it's not valuable. So we become afraid of things when there is nothing to fear. We can be criticized. Well, being criticized is not dangerous. Being kicked out of the nest is dangerous. If a baby monkey is in the nest with high in the tree with the other monkeys, and he's crying and won't shut up, the big monkey is going to take that baby monkey and throw him out of the nest, let him fall to the ground. Why? Because the nest is in danger, making noise that the cheetahs and the panthers and all of those tree cats can hear that noise from many kilometers away, and so the nest is under danger. So this is why we want to stay in our nest, stay in our comfortable place, stay within our herds, because we have that built-in instinct that things are dangerous outside. In other words, we have that self-preservation instinct coming into play, which brings on fear. And that what a lot of the practice of Anapanasati is, what the teachings of the Buddha is to stop being unnecessarily afraid. And what really is going on is that humans go around being afraid all the time, or much of the time. Very rarely do we feel really, really safe and really, really comfortable. So this is what the practice of metta really is about, is the practice of becoming friends with yourself rather than enemies with yourself, whether that yourself, is the friend next door, or the friend down the street, or the Samaritan, or the unknown person. That we can become friends with anyone. We can become kind to anyone only when we have learned to be kind to ourselves. Now, there's many, many different ways that people using that creation instinct to structure their time, and we begin then to get the opinion. In fact, the human race is being supported by all of our cultures support that you can find your satisfaction and your happiness by creating something, by doing Legos, by playing chess, by having conversations with other people. And yet none of those things actually bring happiness, and you can't be playing chess all the time. But one of the things that you can be doing all the time is breathing. And when you start paying attention to your breath, you can do so with the concept or the understanding. Really, it's not a concept, it's a really understanding is that this breath is life-giving. If you don't take the next breath, you're dead meat. You don't need a bobcat to kill you. You kill yourself by stop breathing. So the way to continue to have a good life is by becoming appreciative of the breath that we're taking, and also begin to recognize that we're hard on ourselves a lot. If something breaks, we don't like it. That goes against the creativity instinct. So we're looking for pleasure, or another way of saying it, we're looking for love in all the wrong places. All the wrong places means out there someplace, in society, in the bar, on the dating sites, wherever that we go and whatever we do, even to going to the psychiatrist, looking for love from the psychiatrist, looking for love from mommy and daddy. People go to church looking for love. They want God to love them, and they don't even love themselves. So really, Metta has to start. And there's actually, this is known, even Paul said, charity begins at home. How homey can you get other than right here? This is it. Not your family, not your house, not your neighborhood, but within yourself. The kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, the basilica, the Theos Basilica, which is in the Greek, is within. So we have to start looking within to find our heaven. We have to look within to find kindness, to find friendliness. This is real metta, is to come to the inside and make friends with ourselves. Now, we have been trained to be hard on ourselves. Our societies treat us that way. You've got to pass the test. You've got to make the goal. You've got to graduate. You got to do this and you got to do that, and only then are you okay. But the reality is that when we put all of that aside, we're already okay. Everything is already fine. We don't have to ask any questions about it, that we're already okay. But we come into that state of confusion because we've been trained that way. Our society has expected stuff of us. And so we become afraid, and so we seek security someplace. And that security, in fact, security is probably a better word to use than love. Looking for security in all the wrong places. Why? Because if we're secure, then there's no reason for any fear. And so we can practice then anapanasati in the way of feeling secure, safe, secure, comfortable. This is our practice. If we practice to where we can get safety, security, and comfort, then we can become satisfied. You can't become satisfied if you're uncomfortable. You can't become satisfied if you're in pain. You can't become satisfied if you're terrified or even just a little bit afraid. Now, the interesting thing is that all of these fears, terrors, anxiety, stress, anger, all of these negative feelings, including grief and sadness and whatnot, are all based upon fear. And fear has the component of being chemical within the body. So if we are afraid, you can feel that fear, perhaps a tightness in the chest. This is why the Buddha recommends to become familiar with your body, because there is where the results of all the chemistry is. Fear actually generates adrenaline. Now, the adrenaline is created because of that instinct, that self-preservation instinct, and it has the quality of getting us ready to either flight or fright. So if we're going to fight, then we need that energy. If we're going to flee, we need that energy from the adrenaline. And yet most of us will have a little bit of adrenaline coming in, and there's no place to go and nothing to do in reality. And so we just sit there with that adrenaline in our system, feeling afraid, feeling tight in the chest, having anxiety, having a sense of loss. So now that we can understand where all of this discomfort, all of this dissatisfaction comes from, it comes from our instincts. It also not only comes from our instincts, but is also compounded by the teachings that we've gotten from all of the other people in our society who are also out of control of their instincts. And so mommy teaches little Johnny to be afraid. Mommy teaches everybody to be afraid. Daddy does too. So does the teachers, aunts, uncles. Everybody lives in a state of fear, and they're teaching every little baby to be afraid, be very afraid. And so we grow up teaching ourselves to be afraid, having standards to meet so that we can be a winner, and looking for this love, this safety, this security in all the wrong places. That in fact, you can begin to feel secure by telling yourself that you're okay, that everything is fine, no question about it, everything is already okay. So the Buddha talks about going into seclusion, getting away from all of the influences from society. But when we go off into seclusion, when we practice alone, we come to the point very quickly that we're really not secluded from society. We brought it with us in our attitudes, in our ways of thinking, in our feelings. We even bring it in with our body. All four of the foundations, we bring that insecurity with us when we go into seclusion. Now, the Buddha's got an analogy, and that analogy is actually in Sutta number 36, and I call it the log in the bog. And basically, when a tree falls into the water, falls into the bog, and stays there for years and years, it becomes what we call waterlogged. Now, if you find a log that's in the water, it might be floating. In fact, when logs first fall in the water, they're quite buoyant. But over time, the log becomes waterlogged, and then it will actually sink. In fact, in the swamps that I've been in, you can see that some logs are just right on the surface. They've gotten just enough water so that they're buoyant, but only to the point that they'll remain on the surface. But you can see almost no log at all. So those logs, then, the question that the Buddha asks is, can you set that log on fire? he uses the concept of a fire maker because in the time of the Buddha, it was actually a profession. They had professional fire makers. And that the answer is what, Mickey? Can you set a log on fire when it's waterlogged?
Nope.
Okay, so the analogy is that when we're in society, we're waterlogged with the water of society. So what do we need to do? We need to drag that log out of the bog, set it on the shore, set it on the land. After we bring that log out of on the shore and on the land, now can we set it on fire?
Yeah.
No, it's still waterlogged.
Well, we gotta let it dry out.
You gotta let it dry out. Okay, that letting it dry out is our practice. Now, the practice of the log drying out has the two factors of sunlight and gravity. The gravity will pull the water out of the log from the bottom, which means the top of the log is getting drier. And the same thing is true about the sunlight hitting the top of the log, starting to dry it out. Okay, so in fact, the side point is that this is how dugout canoes were made. That's how they're still made. Is you take a log and get it completely wet, and then as it dries from the top, you set it on fire to burn out. And so you keep the outside of the log and the bottom of the log still wet so it won't burn. And after it's charred, then it's really easy to dig it out. You don't do it with your axe, you do it with fire. And then you use the axe to take out the charcoal. So back to the story about the log in the bog is that if you leave it on the shore and keep it out of the water, it's going to dry out enough to where we can set it on fire. This is exactly what we need to do. This is part of the reason why in Thailand, when a new monk is ready, they'll put him not in the front of the wat, they'll put him way in the back of the wat so that he has 10-minute walk to get to the front of the wat if it's a big forest wat like Wat Suan Mo. So we keep the monks there so that they could be in seclusion, getting away from it all, literally. The guru goes to the mountain. But most Westerners are living a life to where we're in and out of the bog all the time, which means we got to take special care. We're not going to just dry out on our own because we continue to get water poured on. So what we need to do then is to start practicing as much as we can. The very first beginner, I would recommend 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes at a session, having 6 sessions a day to practice having wholesome thoughts. Over and over and over again, we practice those wholesome thoughts for about 10 minutes. Yeah, when we first sit down, we'll have a wholesome thought, and then an unwholesome thought will seep in because that's the nature that we have. And so we have to catch that and bring it back. And the students will ask, well, what is an unwholesome thought? And the answer to that is any thought that you are not intentionally seeing as everything is okay, everything is fine, is probably an unwholesome thought, which means about 99% of all the thoughts that you've ever had are unwholesome. So we have to practice coming out of those unwholesome thoughts into wholesome thoughts. The wholesome thought is, wow, this is nice. Everything is okay. Not a problem in the world. Don't have to go anywhere. Don't have to do anything. I can feel safe and secure and comfortable right now. I don't have to play the piano. I don't have to go skydiving. I don't have to go surfing. I don't have to go water rafting. I can be happy and joyful sitting here and literally talking myself into everything is okay, everything is fine. Now, we've gotten ourselves into quite a habit. In fact, one of the ways of saying it is that you have been talking yourself, and everybody else has been talking to you and talking you into feeling bad. Now is the time to actually start talking to ourselves to start feeling good. Hence, this is where that metta comes in the sense of starting to be friendly with yourself. Now, because the ordinary beginner is going to see an unwholesome thought, what are they going to do? They're going to bring a rule, thou shalt not have unwholesome thoughts, and so they start to feel bad. Many people that practice think the idea is that you've got to get rid of the dukkha, you got to get rid of dissatisfaction, and so when they see dissatisfaction, they feel bad because they've got a rule. The fact is that very few people ever get out of dissatisfaction. The only way to do that, by the way, is being in the first jhana. If you're in the first jhana, that means that your thoughts are wholesome and you are satisfied, but the first jhana is hard to get into and it's fleeting. So we have to practice bringing those wholesome thoughts back in, getting rid of the hindrances, applying our mind to wholesome thoughts, sustaining those wholesome thoughts so that we begin to feel safe, secure, and comfortable. You can talk to yourself into the safety by to say, everything is okay. There's no dangers here. There's no snakes on the floor. The Russian mafia is not banging on the door, and neither is the SWAT team. Everything right now is okay. I can sit in the car and just be safe and secure. And we have to keep practicing this because the unwholesome thought will be, well, what if the cop comes? What if this happens? What if that happens? And so we do a whole lot of whataboutisms. So when you catch yourself doing a what about this and a what about that, you can say, hot dog, right now everything is okay. Everything is fine. No need to terrorize ourselves. That we can actually learn to feel comfortable. This is the real metta, is learning to be kind to yourself, even though you see yourself as a screw-up. The reason that you see yourself as a screw-up is because other people saw you as a screw-up, told you that you were a screw-up, you believed them, and now you're trying to not be a screw-up. So congratulations. You are, here's the example. A brand new mother, when she has an infant, she bonds with that infant. She's very, very kind to that infant. She's very friendly with that infant. When the infant poops in a diaper, she'll change that diaper happily. She'll clean him up, and everything is okay. But somewhere along the line, mommy stops being so friendly and so kind. We don't have that bonding anymore. And so if the 6-year-old poops in his pants, everybody laughs. And if he's 16 and he comes and craps on the carpet in the front room, he's going to have hell to pay. He's not being bonded with anymore. Only infants, only that, and that bonding is what we're beginning to look for now. It's actually it's a chemical reaction inside the body. An example of that is that when a baby is newly born in the hospital, in the maternity ward, when they bring the baby to the mother for the first time, maybe a couple of hours later, and mom sees her infant for the first time, all of the people that work in the hospital and that maternity ward want to come into the room to see that bonding. They feel gushy inside. They feel warm. Everything is so beautiful. And after a couple of minutes, all of those workers in the maternity ward, they go back to their job. They've lost that bonding feeling. So this whole idea then of learning to bond with yourself on the inside, to be your very best friend so that anything you do while it might be a mistake or a tragedy even in the outside world, let it be a tragedy on the outside. Inside, let it be a learning experience. Aha, I see that. This is where the Buddha comes in with the statement of, aha, I see you, Mara. Aha, I see that unwholesome thought. Aha, I see that thought of cruelty, of greed, of wanting something that I don't have. This is the kindness. This is beginning to have metta within oneself. This is where we find the kingdom of heaven within, is because the kingdom of heaven is that bonding feeling, that sensation of being okay. Everything is all right, not a problem in the world. Begin to bond with yourself. And if you can bond with yourself, if you can gain that feeling of safe, secure, and comfortableness, the first thing that happens is you begin to smile. Now, the question is can you continue to smile? You can apply that smile. Can you continue to smile with the understanding that everything is okay, everything is fine? Because if you can do that, if you can actually get up off of the couch or off of your cushion in the meditation hall and maintain that state of being safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied with a great big smile, then you can get up off of that couch, off of that cushion, and go out into the world and keep that feeling of bonding and start to bond with other people, to start to feel friendly to others, to start forgiving them for screwing up. But you can't forgive them for screwing up until you learn to forgive yourself for screwing up. And in fact, the word forgiveness is problematic because it means forgiving means you're already holding resentment and then you give it up. We're looking for the point to where there was no resentment from the beginning. So there's no forgiveness that's needed because everything was already okay. Everything was already just fine. Not a problem in the world. So when that unwholesome thought comes back up, we can say, aha, I see you, and kind of bond with it. That in fact, this is the correct practice because if you can see that unwholesome thought is just another unwholesome thought, one of bazillions that I've had so far, but this time I can see it. This time I'm seeing what's going on because only when you can see it can you change it. And this is the style that we're looking for, is to be able to change. The Buddha's model is a change model. And the way that we're changing is to come out of our feeling of separation, coming out of our feeling of fear, out of the feelings of danger, out of the feelings that you've got to get something done, that there's work to do, I haven't passed the test yet, all of that kind of feeling. We're going to start to change those feelings, but we can only change things that we can actually see. So this is why we're practicing for 10 minutes, for 6 times a day, is to get into that style of looking at what's going on, seeing it, say, hot dog, I can see that, and now I can change it, and I can bring the mind back into a wholesome state. Over and over and over and over again we practice. Why? Because over and over and over again those unwholesome thoughts keep coming back up. And so I highly recommend that you start practicing over and over and over again. That in fact, one of the things that has been done through a bad translation, the bad translation is that the word samadhi has been translated wrongly as concentration. We're not looking for a concentrated mind at all. We're looking for a mind that's integrated, that's whole, that can handle any and everything. So in a way, concentration is exactly opposite of what we're looking for. However, the word concentration does have a use in the sense of, mommy says to the first grader, concentrate on your arithmetic, concentrate on your homework, which is what she's saying is to keep coming back. Yeah, the mind's going to wander away, but you keep back. You do item number one, and then the mind wanders away, maybe to the cell phone or the TV, or maybe off into the world, and then we come back. So think of concentration then is returning, to keep coming back to the wholesome, coming back over and over again. So concentration is not trying to get it tight like this, which is the way that most people think of meditation concentration, but rather think of this, to keep coming back, to keep coming back over and over and over again, to remember to look and to make a change, to remember to look and make a change. These are the first three items, by the way, on the Eightfold Noble Path. To look, to remember to look, and to make a change. This is, now when we say to make a look, they call it badly translated as right view. Right view, in most cases, is just a viewpoint. It's a world view. It's a concept. But we're not talking about it that way. In fact, a better word of using it would be to look, in the sense of to look or looking. Make it a verb. Watching, seeing, listening to the language that we're using. Look at the images that we build. Not in the sense of listening to them in the sense of an order or a concept or something like that, maybe a voice inside, but rather look at it as, aha, I see that I've got a voice inside. Never mind. We're just going to come back and take the right effort to have that voice say, everything is good, everything is fine, no problems, no worries, nothing to do, no place to go. Thoughts of friendliness. Wow, you're making improvements here. Wow, you're getting good at it. Wow, everything is fine. And maybe even, wow, I can do this. Wow, I can be satisfied. Wow, I am satisfied. I can be satisfied now. I can be satisfied the next now. And I can be satisfied the now after that. On and on and on. Wow, I am satisfied. Every time I think of it, I can come back to that state of, wow, I'm satisfied. This is the kind of integration that we're talking about, that kind of bonding that we want to have with ourselves, the kind of friendliness. We start with that. And if you are really friendly with yourself, you're going to start to be friendly with other people. When you stop judging yourself, you'll stop judging other people so much. When you stop seeing that yourself that you're screwing up, you'll start to see other people as not screwing up. That's the rule that we have. We've got standards. We've got ways that you're supposed to do it. Would, shoulds, coulds, etc. Now, one of the things that we can do, in fact, the beginners really can do this, and that is when you're talking, writing, communicating with other people, look at the language that you're using. Find a language list of words that you can use, like, wow, that's good. Everything is okay. Thank you. That's great. These are kind of wholesome language. But the unwholesome language is what we normally use with people. I can't do that. We have words that, in fact, you can have a list of words, don't do it list. And on that list I would put the first word on that list is try. We stop using the word try. If I ask a student, can you do this practice? And they say, well, I'll try, that means that they're going to fail at it. The word try has failure built right in. And we're looking for success. So take the word try out of your language. The little joke is that the wife says, this is a new coffee I'm trying. And the husband answers, your coffee is always trying. So she's trying a new coffee, expecting failure, and he's proving that it is a failure. And he probably hasn't even really given it a good test. He couldn't say, wow, this coffee is great. He says this coffee is always trying. Okay, so let's take this word try out of our language. Another word that we can take out of our language would be work. Oh, this is hard. That's another one. Work, hard, job, and start looking at it and using language like toy and play. That I go to work. I don't go to work. I go to play. I play at IBM. I play at Microsoft. I play at 7-Eleven. But we don't say it that way. We say I work. Now, basically what work is doing something that you were told to do, something that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have a job. You're supposed to work. So that's kind of a rule. And so we do what we're told to do, and we don't like it. We learn to do that as a child. Mommy comes in and says, pick up your toys. Kid didn't want to pick up his toys, but he picks up his toys, but he doesn't like it. Go to school. How many of you have been told to go to school? Did you like it? No. Maybe the first day it was exciting, but the second day and the third day, and it becomes a grind. Nobody likes going to school, but some do like the stuff at school that is not school. One of the things we like to do is bully other people. One of the things we like to do is to fart around, play with our friends, etc., like that. There's a lot of stuff that kids would rather do. They would rather, in fact, go to school and have recess. Recess, that's okay. Why? Because the kids can play. Why can't they come back into the classroom, sit down with that arithmetic, and play with it too? Then, in fact, that's what happens to good mathematicians is that they stop working at math and start playing with it and enjoying it. Like a puzzle, they enjoy those puzzles. That's what makes a good mathematician. The same thing with a, let us say, high-quality musician, maybe a concert pianist. When people begin to play the piano from the first time, they do it and it's work. It's hard to do, a lot of failures at it, but somewhere along the line it's going to click that, hey, I like doing this. And if they have that attitude of I like doing this and they keep practicing, they're going to wind up being a concert pianist or somewhere on stage when they like it. All right, so this is the whole quality, is begin to see all of the work that you're doing as something to play with. Begin to enjoy it. Now, some of them will say, oh, you should get a job that you enjoy doing. The answer to that is you're not. The better way of looking at it is you've got this job, change it from being a job into being a joy. And the way that we can do that then is by taking this language away, stop using the word job and work and hard, and start using words like easy, fun, enjoyable, toy, play. These are the right ways to see our life and the world. Enjoy doing what you're doing. If you're going to do it, why not enjoy doing it? That's your choice. You've got a choice about whether you're going to do it or not. We wind up doing it because we're following the rules, but we don't like it. Now we begin to understand it doesn't matter whether we do it or not. It's a matter of whether we enjoy doing it or enjoy not doing it. But this takes skill. This takes practice again. This takes you from the beginning of 10 minutes at a session, 6 times a day, and then between, you start doing it spontaneously. You practice over and over and over again till you become practicing most of the time. But in fact, this is what the real teaching about the Sotapan is the Sotapan is one who delights in the Dhamma, delights in gladdening and brightening the mind, delights in being delighted. And when we are delighted about the Dhamma, when we have nothing else to look at other than, oh, this is great, this is wonderful, this is the teaching of the Buddha, is to become happy and friendly and joyful, that's the Sotapan, the one who enters the stream. But guess what? Even though he's delighted with the Dhamma, he's enthusiastic about the Dhamma, he seeks out the Dhamma, still, he's only now at about 50% of unwholesome thoughts. But that's the start. One step, the first knowledge that's on the path is the knowledge that no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can come out of it and see the truth. A much later stage would be that I can see that obstruction, that hindrance coming, and I can avoid it. And I start to avoid it 5% of the time, 10% of the time. That in fact, when we begin practicing 10 minutes at a time, we'll probably get about 5% wholesome thoughts and about 95% unwholesome thoughts in that 10-minute session. But hey, it's a start. And when you are in that wholesome thought, right then and there for that short period of time, you're liberated. As you continue to practice, you'll get it up to about 10% of the time. And then you'll get it to where you're walking around in that state. Most of the time, you're free from the hindrances. You're in a state of freedom. The more you practice, the more often during the day you practice, the more and more you'll be free from those unwholesome thoughts. Now, if you can come up to the point, and I don't recommend that you try this or make a rule of it, but there is a state that's called the Arahat, and what that basically means is that this guy is practicing all the time. It's not that he is free from hindrances and free from worries and flurries and farting off and all of that kind of stuff naturally. Oh no, he can go right back into the hindrances if he drops his awareness. So the Arahat is the one who is sharp. He's on it all the time. But he practiced. This was what we would call a world-class human being. Like you have a world-class pianist, but the pianist is not playing the piano all the time. My favorite story is about Arthur Rubinstein, who is one of those well-known concert pianists, world-class piano player. A woman came up to him one time and says, "I'd give half my life to play like you do." And his answer was that, that's about what it cost. Half his life, okay? If you devote half your life to the Dhamma, that will take you up to maybe the Sotagami or Anagami state. But if you practice and give your whole life to it, then that's the state of being an Arahat, that you're on it all the time. And when you screw up, you can say, "Hot dog, I see that," and then you can change it. So this is the way that we would practice to become a Sotapan, is by being eager for the Dhamma, enthusiastic about the Dhamma, delighted with the Dhamma as often as we can. Practice, practice, practice. I have a little joke about practice. There was this young guy carrying a violin in a case, wandering around New York trying to find Carnegie Hall. And he walked up to this old Jewish man and says, Sir, can you help me find Carnegie Hall? And the old Jew says, certainly, son. Practice. Practice. That's the way to Carnegie Hall, is to practice. So this is the way to freedom. Our practice is to practice wholesome, happy thoughts over and over and over and over again. Practice. So this is metta. Metta is practicing being kind to yourself. Practice is being friendly with yourself. Practice actually to bond with yourself. That nurturing feeling of, wow, this is a really wonderful little baby we've got here called me. That's metta. It's not a practice. Metta, in fact, is the result of good practice of anapanasati, of gladdening the mind, brightening the mind, changing the unwholesome thoughts, coming into a state of feeling safe and secure and comfortable and satisfied and successful and eventually wealthy with the Dhamma. That your bucket is so full that every drop that comes in flows out. This is metta, is the overflow. Metta is the overflow. If your bucket is dry, you've got no metta to give. You got to be full of juice, full of the joy. And when it overflows, that's when you're wealthy with it. You're stinking rich with joy. That's metta, is being stinking rich with joy. Stinking rich with friendliness, where you can really bond with others and feel really great joy for their successes and feel really great joy with their screw-ups. Love yourself, warts and all. Love every wart you've got. Begin to love every pain you've got. Ah, wow, what a great teacher I've got. This is metta. So does anybody have any questions? Alex, have you got something to say?
I'm just practicing.
Just practicing. Yeah, just chilling out. How about you, Jordan?
I do have a quick story that you reminded me of with the piano player. My uncle told me about a piano player that was in an interview, and the interviewer asked him, like, isn't it nice that you don't have to practice anymore? Because you're already such a great piano player. And he said, well, the thing is, if I take 1 day off practice, I'll be able to tell the difference. If I take 2 days off practice, other great piano players will be able to tell the difference. If I take
Actually,
3 days off practice,
go ahead.
the whole world will be able to tell the difference.
All right.
So yeah,
That's an adaptation of the actual event. When
oh
it
yeah.
was Arthur Rubinstein, it was asked this, and it
Oh,
was asked
was it
of
the
him.
same guy?
Same guy that I
heard,
mentioned.
I heard
Right.
it from yeah, my uncle. So it was like he heard it, or like I
Right.
probably didn't get it the exact way he told it,
Yeah.
but yeah.
The telephone happens, you know, that people
Yeah.
change. But the actual story is about Arthur Rubinstein himself, and that it was in an interview when he was in his 90s, just a few years, or maybe a year or so before he died. And the interviewer asked him that question, and he says, if I miss 1 day of practice, I'll know it. If I miss 2 days of practice, the housekeeper will know it. Well, the housekeeper is probably listening to him a whole lot more than even the other concert pianist. And he says if I miss 3 days of practice, the dog will know it. All right, so it's the same story, no difference much. Everything is just fine. You can tell the story the way you told it, and it's got the same point.
Yeah, I really like that the link between friendliness, kindness, and bonding. I never really thought about that before, but like when I'm trying to be kind to someone, I never really associated that with bonding. And I like thinking back on it, I have trouble bonding with people sometimes. I notice like fear comes up, and then I'm like, oh no, maybe I shouldn't be bonding with this person. But that's something I realized after you mentioned that, and that's probably something I should work on, is bonding more with people and
I wouldn't work on it. I'd play
as well.
with it.
Yeah,
something
that's something
to
I
play
can play
with.
with. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jonesy, do you have any comments? How about you, Ben? You have something to say?
Only that I feel incredibly satisfied. Thank you, Dhammarato.
Right, great one. How about you, Basil? You got something to say?
Nope.
No.
Everything's all right.
Everything is all right. How about you, Ivan?
Everything's chill.
All right. How about you, Lars? You got anything to say? Wholesome? All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. This has been a really marvelous time with you. I've enjoyed your smiles. Thank you so much. We'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks for being here. See you.
See you,
Thank you,
Dhammarato.
Dhammarato. See you.